Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. I serve on the board of directors of 4 U.S. clean energy companies and just served on the board of a National Academy of Sciences study recommending to Congress ways to strengthen U.S. competitiveness. Overall, the DOE loan guarantee program has had a 4% default rate, which is just 1/4 of the losses projected for and budgeted for. A 4% default rate means a 96% rate. In the real world, where facts matter, a 96% success rate gets you an A. The loan program has done exactly what it was intended to do, help create over $35 billion in investments in renewable energy where the private sector lending was not available. Congress set aside a credit subsidy because it knew there would be losses because the program supports innovation, and these losses are proving far less than projected for and budgeted for. In the real world, where U.S. companies are investing to build jobs and strengthen America's competitive position in global markets, the DOE loan guarantee program is a big success. U.S. success in clean energy matters a lot to the U.S. military. The Department of Defense is the largest energy consumer in the world. Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, put it this way. Why the interest in alternative energy? The answer is pretty straightforward. We buy too much fossil fuel from potentially or actually volatile places on Earth. Every time the cost of a barrel of oil goes up $1, it costs the United States Navy $31 million in extra fuel costs. But it's costly in more ways than just money. For every 50 convoys of gasoline we bring in, we lose a Marine. We lose a Marine killed or wounded. That is too high a price to pay for fuel. In the words of then Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, energy is about not just defense, but security, not just survival, but prosperity. Our national defense infrastructure and systems hold the potential to help stem the tide of strategic security issues related to climate change. The U.S. military, U.S. scientists, and the National Academy of Sciences are unambiguous in their acceptance of the reality and threat of climate change. So why is this Congress undermining U.S. clean energy industry solutions to climate change? Our major competitors, including China and Germany, have invested heavily in expanding their domestic wind and PV corporations. Today, of the top 10 global wind and PV manufacturers, only one of each is located in the United States. We should be deeply concerned about the security implications of the U.S. losing its global competitive leadership position in these critical industries that were largely invented here in the United States in a multi-decade collaboration between U.S. corporations, U.S. DOE, the U.S. military, and U.S. universities. Abdication of U.S. congressional support for U.S. renewable energy industries that were largely created here in America is a disaster for U.S. companies, for U.S. competitiveness, and for U.S. security, but it's a big win for China. Other governments support rather than undermine their domestic clean energy industries. So why are members of this Congress distorting and denying what is clearly a successful American program? If the U.S. military is forced to import the technology it needs to achieve its mission of shifting to clean energy, U.S. security will be weakened. For financial, employment, and security reasons, the U.S. DOE should use the unused loan guarantee funds to support another $30 to $40 billion in U.S. clean energy companies and programs. If this Congress is willing to support America's innovative corporations, the U.S. can regain its global leadership in clean energy and address climate change in a way that builds on U.S. ingenuity and creates American rather than Chinese jobs. Most Americans know that climate change is happening. Most Americans are in favor of renewable energy because it's clean, U.S. grown, and getting cheaper. Most Americans understand that the government gives even larger subsidies to other forms of energy. Most Americans understand that in supporting innovative things, you're not going to bat 100%, but that 96% is obviously a success. And most Americans want this Congress to use its common sense. Thank you.
If it's such a great thing, if it's so wonderful, why do we need the taxpayers to put up millions of dollars and as we unfortunately know, lose several hundred millions of dollars as 3 of these companies went bankrupt?
The reason the U.S. provides subsidies for energy across the board and has done so for 5 or 6 decades is to promote American production of energy. A relatively small proportion of that support has gone to renewables. The reason it's gone to renewables, it's U.S. produced, it's cleaner, it makes the U.S. competitiveness stronger, it creates employment. The success of that program is illustrated by the 96% success rate. That is a terrific success.
How much of those would have been lower than that? I think the last time you were here a couple months ago, you stated that the LPO needed to move faster and be more aggressive. You said that while sitting. You said this while sitting next to Mr. Witzel with Abound Solar, whose company has since gone bankrupt. So obviously, if we'd have moved faster relative to Abound, the taxpayers would have lost a lot more money. Maybe all of that $400 million.
A 96% success rate is really terrific by any measure. It's much more successful than other programs supporting energy. The U.S. Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, in its May 2011 report entitled Estimated Impact of American Recovery and Reinvestment Act on Employment and Economics Output, found that these investments, including the DOE Guarantee Program, raised gross domestic product between 1.1 and 3.1% and increased the number of full-time jobs between 1.6 and 4.6 million.
And this is something no one can prove, but you just know there's a company out there that may have some technology that really could help our country, really could help Admiral Mavis, as you referenced, really could help our national security, really could be beneficial, but they're not getting financing because of this program.
That's not true. I'm actually a venture capital investor, and when we look at companies, we look at their ability to scale and compete internationally. I was actually on the board of a couple companies that applied for funding. The process to get Federal funding is very rigorous. They would have not have received private funding had they not received it. Again, the 3 companies that have had financial problems, there's only partial exposure. We're talking today about Abound. Of that $400 million loan, only $40 million will end up not being repaid back. Overall, in this program, there's a 96%
It's easy to say, Mr. Katz. It's easy to say when it's not your money. You said you were on the board of 4 different companies. Any of those 4 companies, did they apply for dollars in the 1705 program?
None of them did.
Does your company is capital E, right?
Correct.
And I'm looking at one of the things from your company, marketing enabling measures. This is from, I assume this is from something that's put out by your company. And you talk about government or private parties can provide full or partial loan guarantees under default. You talk about things that you do. So have you ever worked on behalf of any of the companies that receive taxpayer dollars?
I served on the board of a company that applied for a DOE loan guarantee. After 2 years, it ended up not getting it. That company was then purchased by Saint-Gobain in France. It illustrates why, if all the other countries support their companies, the United States needs to do so.
Have you ever consulted?
We should not cede the race on clean energy.
You've sat through some of these hearings, Mr. Katz. You've been here. I don't know if you were here for the first couple hours of this hearing. But do you think there's any that political connections, cronyism, had anything to do with this program?
You know, there's hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies have gone to energy, fossil fuels, nuclear, and so forth.
I'm talking specifically about 1705.
1705 is a relatively small amount compared to that. I think there is potential. My impression is DOE has done a very rigorous job in making sure that doesn't happen. I actually worked at DOE, and the level of engagement on both sides of the aisle and from CEOs, who I assume were both Republican and Democrat, we never asked, in terms of trying to find out information, make the case for the plant being built in their district. That happens all the time. It's standard business.
It's standard business for the government employee to tell the private sector, hey, if you're going to send a letter to the White House, here's how you should write it. That's standard business?
Again, I don't think that letter was sent, so you're asking a hypothetical. Most Americans understand that in supporting innovative things, you're not going to bat 100%, but that 96% is obviously a success. And most Americans want this Congress to use its common sense. Thank you.